to move on to our second presenter, and it is Thiri Kyaw, who is going to talk about opening the black box of protection and reintegration interventions for trafficking survivors in Myanmar, a realistic evaluation of World Vision's anti-trafficking in persons program. Thiri is a PhD student at the Gender Violence and Health Center under the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Before commencing a PhD, she worked in various roles such as researcher, gender analyst, humanitarian to UN, NGOs, and civil society organizations for almost a decade. We are also privileged in that Thiri is also a TEDx speaker and award-winning women's rights activist. So let's hear her perspective regarding opening the black box of protection and reintegration interventions in Myanmar. Over to you, Thiri.
Thank you, Finn, for the excellent introduction. So let me share the screen. We'll share the screen to my presentation. Hi, everyone. My name is Thiri Kyaw from Myanmar. I'm normally based in Yangon, Myanmar, but for study reasons, I'm currently in London for a month. So good afternoon from UK, London. I am a first-year PhD student at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and also a seed grant recipient to this Research to Action project. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge all the other team members in this presentation, Professor Kathy Zimmerman as the advisor to the study, and Dr. Emyati and Abke Jaga from Innovations for Poverty Action for the data collection and the partner engagement. Our title is called Opening the Black Box of Protection and Reintegration Interventions for Trafficking Survivors in Myanmar. It is a realist evaluation of World Vision Anti-Trafficking in Persons program. According to ILO, approximately 40.3 million people are in forced labor and forced marriage. 2/3 of its victims, around 35 million people, are in East Asia and the Pacific, according to Global Slavery Index 2016. In Southeast Asia region, trafficking in persons and migrant smuggling remain pressing issues. The number of child victim girls, the majority is the significant higher in the Mekong countries. Since the early 2000s, a significant number of programs or policies have been introduced and developed to prevent and combat human trafficking. However, the literature indicates that only a small number of these anti-trafficking interventions have been evaluated, and few have been evaluated rigorously, methodologically. As a result of this, it causes difficulties in building and developing evidence-based anti-trafficking interventions. So to bridge this gap, we explored World Vision Anti-Trafficking in Persons programming in Myanmar in alignment with IOM and ILO research priority area to provide evidence of what works and what does not of the human trafficking interventions. Through the study, we aim to strengthen protection and reintegration services for survivors of trafficking in Myanmar and examine how the project has been operating in a very highly sensitive context like Myanmar. So let's look at the research context of World Vision program in Myanmar. The World Vision Anti-Trafficking in Person project is a 6-year project conducted in 2 phases. The first phase was implemented from 2015 to 2019 in 15 hotspot areas for migration and human trafficking in Myanmar. The second phase was implemented from 2019 to 2020, expanding to 45 hotspot townships. To provide you more context, phase 2 suffered a great deal from the COVID-19 pandemic. And as some of you may be aware, the Myanmar military staged the military coup on 1st of February 2021, which resulted some major adjustment to the phase 2 of the World Vision project. So over the 6 years, World Vision partnered with 2 local organizations called Karen Baptist Convention, KBC, and Yangon Karen Baptist Women Association, YKBWA, which are the experienced local partner service providers on human trafficking. The World Vision and its main objectives are to improve the victim-centered investigations and prosecutions through the trainings and support to police, judges, prosecutors, and case managers, and to enhance victim protection through comprehensive victim services. So it is worth noting here that the design for the second phase of the project changed dramatically due to the military coup. So in the phase 2, World Vision engaged a great deal with the government counterparts in delivering the services. But in the phase 2, World Vision Myanmar, they didn't continue engaging with the government counterparts because of the nationwide resistance against the military in country. Our main aim for this evaluation is to establish a strong foundation for further investment in Myanmar anti-trafficking in persons programming in a highly sensitive context like Myanmar. To build this evidence base, we assess the World Vision program theory of change and examine its phase 2 outcomes in 2 areas: whether the capacity of the service providers have improved and they were able to provide appropriate services to the identified survivors, or whether the survivors of trafficking received good quality comprehensive services. So as you will see, this is the conceptual framework, realist-informed conceptual framework that we used for our research. The main aim of objective of this study is to verify whether the programmatic assumptions of World Vision anti-trafficking in person project were supported by the evidence that we generated through the evaluation. So we used an adapted, realist-informed conceptual framework developed by this study advisor, Professor Zimmerman. So we look at all these separate components to assess the phase 2 components. So why realist evaluation for this project? Because this the entire study was informed by this framework. Realist evaluation, I'll just provide some information about the method. It investigates what works and what does not, if that works for whom and under what circumstances. So it explains the rationale of the program theory, and it has the program assumptions, it has the hypothesis, and finally, from the evidence, it interprets and refines the program interventions based on the evidence. So the realist evaluation is main ingredients called CMO, context mechanism component, as you saw in the research conceptual framework. It provides an in-depth understanding about the causal pathways by testing the program underlying theory through its multiple components. It focuses on program theories and examine the validity of the World Vision program assumptions when it was designed, and ideas underlying the program, and see the information and decides what components and programs work for whom and under what circumstances. And finally, it provides the transferable guidance based on the program theory, and which can be used to help other programs in the context with a similar background to Myanmar. So it will save, ultimately, it will save a lot of resources when you design the intervention program with less mistakes, I would say. Methodology. So we use multiple sources of data, including World Vision administrative data, as well as in-depth interviews with trafficking survivors and case managers from World Vision Myanmar and its partner organizations, its two partner local organizations, and potential participants for the interviews were recruited through purposive sampling with the support of World Vision. We conducted 12 qualitative interviews with survivors of trafficking and who received any support from World Vision program. In addition, we interviewed 9 service providers associated with World Vision and 2 partner organizations to understand different contexts, work contexts and experiences. So these 9 respondents were randomly chosen from the pool of 17 case managers employed in 3 different programs. So for survivor interviews, we targeted recently enrolled youth victims because of the difficulty in tracing the beneficiaries. Because you may remember, it's a 6-year project, so we cannot trace the survivors who enroll in the earlier stages. And because of the mobile nature of the population. And all these interviews were conducted in Myanmar language by 3 experienced numerators via telephone. So this study, we adhere to the international standards on conducting interviews with the trafficking women because it involves interviewing with the trafficking survivors. So we paid a very extra attention to the ethics aspect of it. And so this, especially the ethics aspects were drawn from WHO ethical and safety recommendations for interviewing with trafficked women. And we received ethic approval on March 2022. And immediately after that, we conducted the data collection at the same month. So here we now at the findings part. So our findings are guided by this framework: context, mechanism, outcome. So mechanisms, we first examine how the activities and mechanisms were delivered by the program. And we explored what are the main outcomes of these activities. We only look at like 3 or 4 major outcomes of these activities. And we continued with the contextual factors and see how this may have influenced the program delivery and effects and in the outcome, both positively or negatively. So when we unpack the mechanisms, we found that the case managers from World Vision Myanmar itself and 2 local organizations, YKB, 2 local organizations, they were trained on several topics related to human trafficking, criminal justice processes, or direct case management, which are required for them for the smooth delivery of the services for the traffic survivors. In addition, they also were trained how to provide psychological counseling, which is the most commonly used for the survivors in this program. And in addition to all these trainings, they also, World Vision also provided mentoring support, on-site mentoring support for the case managers in case of the challenging situations. For the survivors of trafficking, 8 types of supports were offered: housing and accommodation, medical costs if they are required, and education or training, psychosocial counseling, legal counseling if they need the legal advice after they arrived from the transit centers, and the legal support, like if they are facing the legal situation, the case managers accompany them to the court, and social inclusion trainings. And finally is the economic and livelihood support, which is not, the amount is not much, but still something for them to survive in the transition. So this is the mechanism part. Continued, because we also asked, we just didn't end asking what were offered. We also interviewed the case managers and survivors. What did they think about the delivery of the program? If they like the program, or what the delivery, the design of the program, for example, as the case managers, what do they think about the design of the program, or do they like delivering the services? How do they find it? And for the case managers as well, if the support that they received were something that they wanted or they needed, etc. So when we look at those sections, we found that the trainings were mostly helpful, relevant, and useful for the case managers. There are some concerns around the timing of the training, because some trainings, the case managers found that it would have been helpful if the trainings were provided earlier. But other than that, the trainings were completely well received, and they also appreciate the mentoring help offered by case managers, offered to the case managers, because there are situations that arises, and the case managers who are inexperienced, they don't know how to deal with, and they call their supervisors and from World Vision or senior managers, and they immediately receive what to do. Those kind of mentoring support that they mentioned. For the survivors of trafficking, the beneficial support that for them was psychosocial counseling. So majority of the people, survivors, nearly 220 survivors, they use this service, and this is also expected, as you will expect that, because as the survivors, they are stressed, and the discomfort and stigma living in the community. So they really needed this support, and they really appreciated how this service was delivered. And legal counseling, in particular, they really appreciated the case managers escorting them to the court, because they felt that the power dynamics for them is big, so they really didn't feel confident when they faced during the court. And this aspect of the support that World Vision provides is really unique, and they really appreciate that. But as always, we found that there are also support that that receives mixed reviews, which is the livelihood support. And the accommodation. Livelihood support is something that they found really useful, but because of the circumstances, there are difficulties in sustaining it, which I will explain in the later slides. And there is also unique about survivor gathering that World Vision offered, where survivors are gathered, and then they invite the policymakers or anyone influential with the policy making. They invite them. So the survivors were gathered, and then they feedback the services and the concerns that they raise among each other. So this is also appreciated. So outcomes, we found that the capacity of the case managers grew significantly. They said that their needs are reflected in the types of the training received. As in particular, they appreciate the counseling and interpersonal skills, because this is also the skills that are really needed in dealing with different types of survivors. And they also appreciated, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the mentorship that senior employees provided to them. For the survivors of trafficking, the survivors indicated that they improved their psychological well-being. They have gained more motivation and confidence because of the case manager's constant psychological support, and they increased self-esteem. And the legal support are also very much appreciated with the positive outcomes. They have shared how much it has given confidence to deal with difficult life situations. And for the outcome section, the livelihood support, as I was mentioned in the mechanism section, it meets the immediate needs, but not sustainable for some survivors. We found that younger cohort, younger survivors, they struggle because they are less experienced and the lack skills to sustain the livelihood support compared to the older counterparts. And sometimes because the livelihood support, because there are so many survivors who choose different types of livelihood livelihood options. So the case managers of those survivors may not be equipped with the skills to provide guidance for those survivors.
Sorry to interrupt
I'm running out of time.
You have 3 minutes to wind up, yes.
Okay, I can wrap up. I think that I've just mentioned a great deal in the previous slides. So the context part really matter for this outcome, because although they are trained with good support, there are parts, the contextual part that matters, like individual agencies and characteristics. You have to also work with the community members and family members and case managers. The relationship part is also important as part of the contextual factors. And you also have, because this program suffers a great deal from the political and pandemic context, which is highly influential to the outcome of the program. I think this slide is self-explanatory, so I'll just move on to the last slide. So finally, this is the left part is the World Vision previous theory of change model. And so their assumption is that if service provider capacity is improved, and when the survivors are empowered, and when the communities have increased knowledge, the services will be comprehensive and sustainable. But by looking at the phase 2 components and evidence, we found that it's not that straightforward. We only look at 2 parts of this program, but we found that there are more nuances that we need to consider in designing this program. For example, we should look at the relationship aspects of the program, and we should also consider individual characteristics of the survivors and not treat them as the unanimous population, more treat as the heterogeneous population. So it has to be designed based on that. And we also have to be very flexible with the program activities adjusted to the pandemic and political context in particular. So only then we believe that this refined model will have more, provide more flexible activities which can be transferred to other contexts or other types of programming in Myanmar. Any question, please? And these are our contacts. You can reach out to us for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Thiri. This was very informative. And
I went overboard, sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'll open up to questions. I was monitoring the chat. I did not see any specific questions targeted to this, but there is a comment from Rosa Marta from Mexico, who said they would want to know the details of your methodology, and they think it's excellent and well organized, and how can we learn about it? They're also asking for a presentation, which Lorraine has been responding to throughout, that they'll share the presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Thank you for taking my question. This is David Curry speaking from the US, GE2P2 Global Foundation. We have a very strong interest in how ethics review for complex and very important evaluations such as this proceed. And congratulations on this very excellent and important work. You did have on one of your slides that there was a point, obviously, where ethics review was achieved. My question is, where was ethics review conducted? Was any ethics review conducted locally? And at any point, did the ethics reviewers, the ethics committee, whatever they might have been called, challenge any dimension of your project plan? I'm raising this particularly because the complexity of the work stream that you initiated, the range of interviews that you conducted, especially with younger persons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, make this a somewhat complex and nuanced approach. So it's just a general question about how the ethics review was conducted. Were you challenged? And what local ethics review might have complemented what may be a London School review, which I suspect happened. Thank you for any response.
Thank you, David, for raising. Pin, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I wanted to say, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, David. I think it's a very important question, and it really makes sense to raise this kind of question. So before we begin, we are also we paid very extra attention to this aspect of it. And so to address your question directly, we submitted this a proposal to the IPA, Innovations Body Action Ethics Review Committee, and our research team is an experienced team members who have conducted this a balanced type of research before, and unfortunately we didn't have any local ethics review committee. It would have been great if we have it, but as you can see, the context is highly sensitive, and if this is the type of research that the government of Myanmar dislike and stay away from, because there are foreigners involved, and they dislike something that said bad about them. But anyhow, it was impossible for us to go through the local review committee, but we felt that the IPA review committee is still a good option to go through. So we went through it, and they didn't specifically challenge the aspect of the ethical aspect of it. But you also pointed out that the younger person of this project. So we deliberately stayed away from the younger participants. So I think maybe I did not reflect that in the presentation. We only interviewed children, the girls who were over 18 when we interviewed. So they were slightly younger when they were enrolled, but they were already 18 when we interviewed them. I hope that answers.
Thank you. I'll follow up. Thank you. I appreciate your response.
Sure, David. We'd love to catch up and discuss in great details about this.
I do not see any other question. If there's somebody with a question, you can raise up your hand. We have 3 minutes to entertain further questions. But while we are waiting, Thiri, can I just ask how the local organizations were selected in working together with World Vision in this program? And did the change in government affect their operations in any way, and the subsequent reintegration and assistance provided to victims?
So the 2 partner organizations are already the partner of the World Vision organizations. Mm-hmm. And for the second phase, I mentioned that it's because of the political contest, it has affected the program. And I think that it was a very difficult period for World Vision, because it's a 6-year project. It has already completed the first half of the project, which was quite successful with dealing with the government counterparts. For the second program, the situation is like, the situation did not allow anybody in Myanmar who are operating this kind of services to work with the government, because the situation was so volatile. And if you decided to go ahead with engaging with the government, you may be labeled as something bad person, or it could have affected your program anyway. So I think that a lot of organizations had to withdraw with their engagement with the government for a while. So that period was the time that we evaluated the phase 2. It's been a little relaxed now, quite a while these days, but still people are working along the line. It's not easy.
All right, thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
I think you indicated that you are from World Vision, and additionally partners were selected according to existing capacities in providing survivor-focused services in the geographical hotspot areas targeted. Thank you so much. There's also an additional response for David's question regarding the ethical review process. So he mentions that in addition to review by IPA RFB for future research studies, we have set up a local review committee. So that's in line with David's the question on ethical review in such a sensitive context. Thank you for the clarifications, colleagues from IPA and from World Vision. My last question to you, Thiri, before we move on is I'm really happy that at the end you managed to come back to your theory of change, which you wanted to either confirm or review based on the evaluation findings. This is something that is very important, as most theory of changes sometimes are crafted based on all the evidence except evaluation. And rightly so, because when you implement a project, you have a certain narrative and thinking that you have behind it. It's always important as evaluators to still come back to the theory of change and revisit it based on the findings of the evaluation. And in your changed or in your revised theory of change, if you can go to the last slide, which shows the old one and the one that was revised after the evaluation. It talks about political and pandemic context. I just want you to clarify whether the political context, the pandemic I would understand, but whether the political context was not considered when the project was conceived, because it is now coming up in the revised theory of change, but in the initial, it seems to be missing. Was it not considered, or it wasn't just part of the explicit theory of change that is in black and white?
So, okay, P, this is a very important question, and I did not have enough time to explain this part, especially I could have given more time on this. But the political context is because World Vision started this quite early 2015. And in 2021, the military coup happened, like no one was expected it. So before that, we were having civilian government, and the political climate was not perfect, not ideal, but still workable. And there were challenges, but not that good, because it was the democratic government. And the political aspects right now is that so after 2021, things have changed dramatically, especially the public sentiment towards the government, towards the military government. It's quite strong. So anything that has to do with any project that has to do with the government, if the organizations decide to engage with the government, military government, people will react to your organizations. So I think all these considerations have to be made in the next programming. Let's just say, for example, there were already restraints working with the government for this type of programming. For example, I remember what the manager of the World Vision Myanmar, she explained to me that there has to be some flexible situations has to be introduced, because the government is very strict, and it's really difficult when the program activities are also fixed, and the government is also fixed, and these two will not go along. So this type of examples could happen in the future, and more so, even more so after the coup. So okay. This was what I meant by that.
Okay.
And I agree that this is a learning process. This is not a perfect refined model. I still have to work on it, but for this presentation purpose, I just put it out there. But I would love to discuss more in details too. I will learn a lot from the expertise that you provide.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'll just read a few of your positive comments that also came. Thank you very much for the presentation from Scholastica. We had Mila, who said, enjoyed the presentation, complex research, and other colleagues. You can go through the comments. There are so many positive comments. Colleagues really appreciate your presentation and the work you did in this.